children. And I happen to agree with a lot of the things he says.
That's a look back at just some of Donald Trump's praise for his latest controversial cabinet pick, as he has chosen Robert F. Kennedy Jr., an anti-vaccine activist, to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. We'll have much more about that selection straight ahead. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, senators in both parties are demanding the release of an ethics report on Trump's choice for Attorney General. We'll show you what the lawmakers had to say about the years-long investigation into Matt Gaetz. And we'll bring you new reporting on why Trump's relationship with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un could be different in his second term. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Friday, November 15th. I'm Jonathan Lemire, in for Joe, Mika, and Willie. With us, a great group. We have NBC News national affairs analyst and a partner and chief political columnist at Puck, John Heilemann, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and associate editor of The Washington Post, Eugene Robinson, President Emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations, Richard Haass, who is also the author of the weekly newsletter Home and Away, which is available on Substack, Managing Editor at The Bulwark, Sam Stein, you just saw him ably host Way Too Early, and Washington Bureau Chief at USA Today, Susan Page. Thank you all for being here this morning. We have a lot to get to. Let's dive right in. Both Democratic and Republican senators are calling for the release of a House Ethics Committee report on Matt Gaetz before his confirmation hearing process begins for Attorney General. The bipartisan panel has been investigating Gaetz off and on since back in 2021. Most recently, it has been focusing on alleged sexual misconduct, illicit drug use, improper use of campaign funds, and accepting improper gifts. Is that all? Gaetz officially resigned yesterday from Congress, a day before the panel planned to vote on whether to release its report. But senators on Capitol Hill yesterday were demanding that that information still be made public.
The timing of his resignation and flight with President-elect Donald Trump suggests he believes that this report is not friendly and favorable. So I want to read the report and find out what the investigation behind it brought out. I'm asking for them to share that with the Senate Judiciary Committee. I want to preserve this report. I want to have the documentation behind it and have a chance to review it carefully, both Democrats and Republicans.
I think there should not be any limitation on the Senate Judiciary Committee's investigation, including whatever the House Ethics Committee has generated.
So you want to see it?
Absolutely.
Matt Gaetz has chosen to resign from the House, but he can't choose to conceal that information. I can name between 5 and 10 Republicans who are seriously considering voting against this nomination and insisting that there be a vote. Republicans as well as Democrats are absolutely aghast at the idea that we would allow a recess appointment of the top judicial officer in the United States of America. That is absolutely abhorrent to the powers and traditions of the United States Senate and the Constitution.
Do you have any concerns about someone who's been accused of sex trafficking, possibly leading the Department of Justice?
Do I have concerns about that? Well, just to name one, I mean, Matt Gaetz comes to mind. I have concerns about him, about the way he disrupted and really destroyed the House of Representatives for several months. What he did to a really good speaker in Kevin McCarthy and accomplished nothing except getting rid of him and, ruined the reputation of the House of Representatives.
Let's underscore those are both Democrats and Republicans calling for that information to be released. And House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, you just heard his name. Well, he also weighed in on Matt Gaetz's nomination as AG yesterday during an interview he conducted with Bloomberg News.
What do you make of the choices so far?
I think the choices are very good except one. Look, Gaetz won't get confirmed. Everybody knows that.
You say Gaetz will not be confirmed. No. Why bother with the nomination then?
You can talk to the president, but it's a good it's a good deflection from others, but it also gives. I'll let it stand with that.
No, I mean, just provide us some thinking into, what Trump had in mind when he made that nomination? Is it a case of, you win some, lose some? It is a negotiating tactic? What is it?
You'd have to ask the president, but Gates couldn't win in a Republican conference, so it doesn't matter.
Certainly no love lost between McCarthy and Gates. McCarthy blames Gates for his ouster. So much to discuss here about this pick, John Heilemann. There is some reporting, and people I've talked to say that, Gates' nomination very much in doubt. We will see if that report is officially leaked or finds its way officially leaked or finds its way into a reporter, officially released or find its way into a reporter's hands.
There's 0.0% chance that report will not become public. So it went through one channel or the other.
So when it does, one way or the other, what sort of impact do you think it'll have?
Well, I mean, let's just say it's not going to be good. I don't think what we know about this case, which isn't up close to everything, is that it's going to be embarrassing for Gates. I don't know if Gates is embarrassable, and at this point, I don't know if Trump is embarrassable, but it's not going to help. I think there's only one real question here, right, which is the question about whether the normal rules of political physics still apply in the Senate and House, because this is. Trump could have 45 different motives for why he's doing this, but the main motive, I think, for this is the same as the motive for a lot of these nominations, which is Trump is trying to expand the power of the executive. He's trying to basically obviate the role of the Senate. He would like to either in a de facto way or de jure way get rid of advice and consent. And so the fight over with John Thune and others, ostensibly, over the question of is the Senate still going to have its traditional role? Are they going to the question over recess appointments? If Trump could turn the Senate into a rubber stamp, that is what he would like. And this is a way of forcing that issue, not just Gates, but across the board on some of these less confirmable, obviously confirmable nominees. And I think we're very colorful, some of these very colorful nominations, and lots to criticize in them. But the fundamental thing here is about Trump's very early efforts to try to arrogate more and more power to the office, to himself personally, but to the executive branch as a proxy for him.
So, Susan Page, let's dive into that. This is such a early stress test on the Republican-controlled Senate, and particularly its new majority leader, John Thune. I mean, there was, Thune wasn't Trump's pick for that post. Republicans defied him, but they did so with a secret ballot. It's very different now that they have to put their names to it. What's your sense as to their appetite for standing up to the incoming president?
Well, let's just count the ways in which Republicans in the Senate have stood up to Donald Trump. Yeah. None, never,
not too often.
Right? Not too often, right? And not in things that Trump really cared about, like impeachment. So I would, I think it's possible the Senate wouldn't confirm Matt Gaetz. I think it is conceivable that they would. And I think it's also possible there's another repercussion to this, which is if for some reason Matt Gaetz does not get confirmed, either because the ethics report is so explosive that he can't possibly continue with his nomination, or because the Senate actually refuses to confirm him. I think that just really clears the way for these other appointments that maybe seem quite remarkable and out of the mainstream, but are not as bad as Matt Gaetz. So maybe the second person who gets nominated for AG, or maybe Tulsi Gabbard. Maybe other people get a pass because the Senate in the end stands up to Matt Gaetz.
Right. They feel like they can stand up against one and then not others. And so in a moment, we'll talk to Richard Haass about the need to have actual competence ahead of at the top of these hugely important departments. But Sam Stein, let's talk a little more about the politics of it, and in particular, this idea of recess appointments, which has gotten a lot of buzz in recent days. What are the latest you and your team are hearing about whether that's a real thing, and explain what it would look like?
So it's a real thing in that the Trump people want it to happen if they can't get their nominees through. I mean, it wasn't a bluff. They're putting it out there. I think ideally what they would have happen is that threat would linger, and that would prompt Republicans to say, oh, we don't want to blow up the institution, therefore we should just get these people confirmed through the old-fashioned way. What it would look like, though, is procedurally kind of complicated to explain and difficult to understand. Essentially, the Senate Republicans would have to have a resolution from the House that allowed them to go to recess. They would then vote on it. 50-vote threshold. It's the same exact threshold just to confirm these nominees anyway. And so, will they have the votes to do that, but not have the votes for the nominations themselves? That's hard to say. Ultimately, I think it's probably going to be that they just take the votes rather than go to recess, and that they ultimately pass a lot of these nominees. But look, Gene, you and I were talking about this. I mean, it ultimately comes down to John Thune and a couple other of his colleagues willing to say, you know what, we actually like our institutional powers, and we want to keep them, and so therefore we should not do this. But there's no history of them actually having that type of spine.
No, there is a history of senators feeling self-important and feeling self-importance for the institution. Right. So there is that, and that's a real thing. But there's no history of them really standing up to Donald Trump. So why would we expect them to do this? And I think we should keep in mind that if they don't confirm or they let this linger somehow, they don't go to recess, there is a provision in the Constitution. I mean, Trump can adjourn Congress. Right. And so would he go that far? Well, he's gone as far as Matt Gaetz and Tulsi Gabbard, so why wouldn't he go that far? I don't think he's bluffing.
No. And certainly, I think there's also an element here of Trump wanting to simply to break the Senate, break any chance of resistance that they might have going forward. But there would be, of course, legal challenges to any sort of recess appointments, potentially all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yes, where Trump has some friends.
That would very different, perhaps rule differently than has previously on this very issue. So, but it's not just about Matt Gaetz. That's not the only pick that Trump has made that's garnered some real headlines and skepticism in recent days. Another, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., his choice for Health and Human Services Secretary. That came yesterday. That department oversees several agencies, including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Food and Drug Administration. The position does need to be confirmed by the Senate. Kennedy aligned himself with Trump after ending his own bid for president earlier this year. He is an environmental lawyer, at one time respected for his work, who in recent years has become an outspoken conspiracy theorist. Kennedy has criticized COVID vaccines and childhood immunizations, falsely claiming that they have ties to autism and other things. He's also promoted products and medicines that the FDA has strictly warned against, such as raw milk. Kennedy thanked President-elect Trump for the nomination last night, writing on social media that he will, quote, clean up corruption, stop the revolving door between industry and government, and return our health agencies to the rich tradition of gold standard evidence-based science. We can certainly fact check that. The president-elect has had nothing but praise for Kennedy and his ideas in the last few weeks. On the campaign trail, Kennedy promised to let RFK Jr., quote, go wild on medicine. And last night, Trump again touted his choice.
Today, I nominated him for, I guess, if you like health and if you like people that live a long time, it's the most important position, RFK Jr. Bobby? Good. And I just looked at the news reports. People like you, Bobby. Don't get too popular, Bobby. You know, you've reached about the level. Now, we want you to come up with things and ideas and what you've been talking about for a long time, and I think you're going to do some unbelievable thing. Nobody's going to be able to do it like you, and boy, does he feel it in his heart. So congratulations also to your family.
In the hours after RFK Jr.'s nomination, there was decidedly mixed reactions from lawmakers on Capitol Hill. While many Democrats criticized the choice, Republicans, for the most part, appeared largely unbothered by the nomination, some even expressing enthusiasm. Senator Tommy Tuberville called it a brilliant pick,